he has. And let's keep in mind, this is Sammy's book. So Sammy is going to paint the picture the way he wants to paint. You're getting everything from Sammy's perspective. Got to keep that in mind. Okay.
From red rose-colored glasses?
Right, exactly. Red rose-colored glasses. So he has this sort of chip a little bit. Like, these guys would be lucky to have me. But
For sure.
He has that attitude. Like, he talks about 5150. He's like, Alex being drunk all the time, Eddie napping all day. The studio was a filthy dump, he's calling it. He said it looked like it was made out of model airplane gear. He said it smelled like the worst bar on the planet. He described the Van Halen brothers as beat up. And then he describes himself walking around in a Miami Vice-style suit with tennis shoes. And obviously he was living a different lifestyle for sure. He was married, he had kids, he knew how to handle money. And then he says, it's a direct quote, "In my head, there was no way I was joining Van Halen." Like he has this sort of like attitude, like, they'd be lucky to have me. We'll see. And even on the phone call with Eddie, oh man, we'll see, man. We'll see. Well, meanwhile, I think behind the scenes, he is pulling the strings to get this to happen. And I think that he was going in there, checking out the situation and what's what, and he realized, oh, this is an opportunity. And not just musically, but from a business standpoint. I feel that he got that vibe. What do you think?
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I mean, when he walked in, he was looking at all that. He also said the board at 5150 was a homemade board.
Yeah.
Which we know is not true.
Right.
I mean, Ed bought a used board, but like a major board that had been used on other recordings in the past from a studio that had gotten closed down or whatever.
Right.
But absolutely. I think he walked in and he said, I can work with these guys.
Right.
And I think these guys are looking for some leadership. I think I could be the alpha dog.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly
because, they had Dave had taken a lot of the support with him.
Right.
And at that time, Ed and Al and Mike were less interested in the business side of things.
Right.
And Sam had great manager, Ed Leffler, who told him, he was like, I don't know, Sam. Like, you're definitely going to take a pay cut for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to split in 4 ways.
Right. But I think between the both of them, I think they were like, you know what? If we can get this to work and if we can get the record companies to agree with this, I think this is a good thing. So, Sam definitely saw this as an opportunity, even though at that time, he was ready to take some serious time off because he had been working his butt off for about a decade.
Oh, yeah.
Building himself up between two record companies. Geffen was treating him right. He was finally getting albums that were going gold or going platinum. He was getting activity on the charts for singles and albums. I mean, things were really going for him. Now, in the book, I think he tends to elevate that a little more than it was. But it's fair to say that Sam was at his peak at that time.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, he was comparing himself to Van Halen.
Right.
It wasn't at that level.
No.
I mean, we both know that. I think everyone listening to this podcast knows that.
Right.
But he definitely saw this and said, this is my ticket to the next level. I was going to take a year off, but you know what? This is too good of an opportunity to pass up.
It's too good. Well, it's smart of him to smell it, that's for sure. Second of all, is he said originally they started with Summer Nights. Now, remember, if we talked about this before, I think Ed had Summer Nights and, what was it, Good Enough, Dave? He had Good Enough in Summer Nights as a demo that even Dave heard, right?
I believe so. Yeah. I believe those are the two songs, yes.
And apparently, he says here, Dave apparently didn't have good rhythm and wasn't a good singer, didn't have any range. And then he realized that there was some chemistry there, and he started singing Summer Nights, and that was apparently the first song they ever did. Van Halen was like, we got a band. And Sam's playing it cool. He's like, I don't know. It sounds great, but let's talk about it. Maybe I'll come back next week or something. Like, he's playing it cool. Now, the funny thing is that Sammy compares them to Cream, which I was like, where is he getting these? I realized it was Cream all over again. Slow, confident, and almost majestic. a groove thing with up-tempo. Alex had laid back on the drums, Eddie deep in the pocket. His manager did like a forensics accounting on the band. He said that the band was in bad financial shape. And like you said, that he would have to take a pay cut. But Sammy said he knew once he got everything started that the music was already there and was all going to just happen. He said Eddie wasn't a driven musician. At one point, making the first album, I was nervous with his nonchalantness, his lack of concern for the whole thing. It wasn't like he was this musical genius telling everybody what to play. So he was really throwing it down there on Ed. And I think what he meant by that was he didn't have Ted Templeman there sort of guiding him. I mean, Ted was a very strong hand in shaping Van Halen. Not so much creating what Van Halen was. Eddie and Dave created what Van Halen was, but making sure that he shaped it. Meaning, like, he didn't create it, but he shaped it. He made sure that he gave them the right platform. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. But it's interesting because he says later in the book that Ed, and Al for that matter, had great work ethics. That those guys were working like dogs.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, that would be Ed's critique later.
Yes.
About in fact, what Sam says about Ed now, Ed would say about 11 years later about Sam.
Right.
So it's pretty fun how what goes around comes around.
Right. Well, I think it's for different reasons, though. Like, later on, Sammy's sort of a fat cat rock star, and he wants to sort of take it easy and kind of enjoy his life. I mean, let's be honest, Sammy's also 7 years older. So, like, you know, keep in mind, they're in different age ranges, too. So, Sammy was in a part in his career, like, we're talking about, like, the Balance era, where he wanted to kick back a little bit. Whereas Ed was like...
that age thing, I don't buy into that too much.
Okay.
Because it's true, but remember also, around that time, Sam had gotten remarried.
Right.
He had just had a kid.
Right.
So in terms of life cycle, he wasn't ahead of them.
Right.
He was actually behind them because he was starting all over again.
Right. No, yeah, totally. Absolutely. And I found this sort of interesting. He was talking about, I guess, Van Halen's songs. He said Ed was very unaware of the lyrics of the old Van Halen songs. He said he couldn't sing me one song. He didn't even know what the fuck Dave was singing about. All he focused on was his guitar. What did you make of that?
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Really?
I know I have read that before, and not just from Sam.
Okay.
I mean, I think I've read that in interviews with Ed.
Right.
Now, those may have been interviews when he was with Sam or even with Gary.
Right.
Because those guys, you know, had a different style, and some would say, well, not Sam, but maybe Gary, a heavy lyric style, and Ed would be like, well, I never really paid attention to the lyrics. I mean, I think there's one song, I forget what it is, but Ed would always forget the chorus when he would sing it, and he would have to tape it to his pedal board to remember the chorus.
Right.
It was a Dave era song. I forget which one it was.
Okay.
But I really think, but Ed has said that. I mean, who knows? But honestly, I don't think Sam is far off there. I think Ed really focused on the lyrics. And as long as one of these guys had something to sing, let's face facts. Sam is the guy who wrote Wham Bam, Rollin' Amsterdam.
Right.
And Ed didn't even blink, and it was on the album.
Good point.
So when Sam says Ed didn't pay attention to the lyrics, I don't think he's far off, to be honest with you.
Good point. And now Sam called Michael Anthony his Ed McMahon. He was always there, ready to back the play. And then he said that Ed and Al were tight as nails. They'd fight once a week. They'd literally get in fistfights that Michael Anthony would have to pull them apart from each other. And he said Valerie was a really cool chick that could hang with the boys. He didn't see much of her because she was at the Malibu Beach House lot, which was Ed's other house. And he said, from the start, they trusted me and I became the motivator. They loved that and they rallied behind me. So that says a lot. And he says there was a lot of doubt about Van Halen at the time. No one seemed to have confidence in the band's future. He's talking about the record company. A lot of the record company people were very, very, very sketchy about Van Halen without David Lee Roth. Now, keep in mind, David Lee Roth did well with the band. Then he left the band, went solo, and blew up with Crazy from the Heat. So, and like Dave said earlier in this conversation, a lot of the production people and everybody who worked for Van Halen went with Dave. Everybody sort of went with Dave. Like Ted Templeman, a lot of the lighting people, the crew people. The band was sort of just left there. You know, they were just hanging. And there was a lot of doubt about it. But what did you think of this comment, Dave, he made about how they trusted him and he became the motivator and they rallied behind him? What did you make of that?
I think that is Ed's nature, from what I understand. I mean, they liked the guy. I mean, they must have trusted him because Sam came in, brought his manager, they used his manager, and quite frankly, they needed that. And they knew that. And the record company knew that. Because Dave was more than the singer of the band. I mean, he was the guy who would kick their butts and get things done, along with Ted Templeman as a producer and executive. But when Dave left and took that infrastructure with him, that's why the record company was like, yeah, these guys are great musicians, but are they going to get it done now?
Yeah.
Because if they had gone down to 5150 and they saw what Sam saw,
right,
then you kind of wonder, like, you know, without somebody leading these guys, are they going to get anything done? Are they going to put out an album?
Yeah.
So here comes Sam, who can provide that and help them out.
Absolutely.
And I mean, he rose to the occasion. He ran with it.
He did. And you know what? You can't really fault his track record because they really had a lot of success under him. So now, like he mentioned, that there wasn't a lot of confidence in the band's future, but he said the record company wanted to change their name to Van Hagar. Sammy thought it was a terrible idea. Funny enough, though, Sammy says he thought he was Irish, but he actually was Dutch. And he said the family name might have really been Van Hagar, which I thought was kind of funny. And he said, we knew it was going to work because we knew we had some killer tracks. And he said all the recording was done in secret. Now, one thing in the book, I don't know if this is correct, Dave. Sammy claims he was Geffen's biggest artist at the time. This whole thing about Sammy being as big as Van Halen on his own is just insane. I don't...
Right. Well, that is caca, right? Okay, so we all know that. We can just get that out of the way.
It's ridiculous.
As far as Geffen's biggest act, now, I can't remember who were the other acts that Geffen had signed.
Don Henley, I know, was on that. This is now Sammy was there before Aerosmith and before Nirvana and before. Okay,
so Don Henley was definitely doing well. As a solo artist around that time.
Yes, for sure.
Now, when did Building the Perfect Beast come out?
Building the Perfect Beast.
Wasn't that around that time?
I thought it was 85, wasn't it? I mean, hold on.
Okay.
Well,
that's what I was going to say. I thought it was 85.
Yeah, I thought it was 85.
Right, and that was a monster album.
Right.
And even before that, Don's album before that, whose name I can't remember, but it had the song Dirty Laundry on it. I mean, Don was doing well as a solo artist. It wasn't like he was floundering. Right. I don't think he was doing any worse than Sam. And I think, did they also sign Donna Summer or something like that?
Oh, Jesus. Oh, well, Donna Summer's on Casablanca, right? I mean, I don't...
Well, she was, but did she... I don't want to misspeak, but I thought...
I'm not sure. By the way, Building the Perfect Beast is 84. So...
Oh, okay.
So Henley was definitely bigger than fucking Hagar. I mean, come on.
I would say so.
Building the Perfect Beast was a huge album.
Yes, for sure.
Huge.
Now, if he was going to say, listen, I was definitely one of the top 5 acts there, that's believable.
Yeah.
That I would believe, because the record company itself was only about maybe like 5 years old or something like that.
Right, it was pretty young.
It was pretty new. And to be fair, I mean, when they signed Sam, he was a grade B level opening act kind of guy, except when he went to St. Louis, because they love him in St. Louis.
Right, St. Louis just loves him.
Absolutely.
Right.
And when he came to Geffen, that somehow they did it right. Somehow they found the secret sauce. They polished up his music a little bit, and they made it work for him. So was he one of the biggest ones at the time? Yeah, for sure. The biggest, I would go in on a bet and say, Sam, I'm not sure. For Don Henley alone, for that album.
Oh, totally. And, it's funny because if you think about the logistics, though, the finances, It really is a fucking mess to clean up. So Sammy is already signed to Geffen. He's a few albums in with Geffen, right? Maybe, 3 albums, right? 3 albums with Geffen. Each one did better than the next.
Yep.